So I was asked to answer the question, is technology empowering the already empowered? And I think the other way to twist that question around is to talk about whether access to technology has democratized our societies. So I think we've heard today a lot about different tools, which are about people being able to participate and people, maybe petitions online, where they can put petitions online, they can get services online, they can learn about their schools, they can learn about their environment. The question that I have every time when I look at those things is, who are the people who are participating at this? If you look at only opening opportunities for people to participate, be it online or offline, generally it's, I would say, a certain profile maybe. It's the people who are already interested in and have the time and the resources to pursue what is best for their kids, even though everybody wants what's the best for their kids, but they have the information and they can digest this information and use this information to make better decisions. Now, when you talk about empowerment in technology or democratization in technology, usually what comes to mind is the digital divide. And the digital divide, I would argue, it's more than just about people having access to computers. So I'm sure many of you know this case. About 15 years ago in rural India, there was an experiment where I think the US funded putting computers into a wall and just watching in places where kids play and just watching what happens with that. What happened was, so this project was actually a huge success, or it was hailed as such. Kids learned how to use the computer without any supervision, without anybody telling them what to do there. And the computers, everything was in English, so it wasn't even in their language. But research years after that found out that the kids, the only thing they learned how to use Paint. So they learned how to click buttons and how to go where they could, be on Paint or open a Word document, but nothing more than that, really. And some of the parents even argued that this, because they were able to play, this took away time from what they usually, the time that they usually spent for learning. Now, from my own experience, so I guess the point I'm trying to make, access is not empowerment, and it's definitely not engagement. So from my own experience, years ago, I started this project on social media at the local level. Now, in Kosovo, about 75%, there's internet penetration. People are young, they're very young, they're tech savvy, they're online, they're on social media. There's a huge democratic deficit, if you want to call it that. People are not participating, and usually if you're coming from a development sector, you're thinking people are not participating because they don't have channels to participate. So to hold politicians accountable at a local level, we started this online chat, let's call it like that, on Facebook, where people already were, and they could ask anything they wanted their mayor, and their mayor could respond to them. And I will tell you, in all honesty, that it faltered completely. And that context, timing, and your audience, they matter a lot when we're designing these things. And I will come to design shortly. After that, we tried the same experiment in a different context where it was local elections. The mayors were already on social media, but the mayors were already on social media, and we did it in the capital city, and it was a huge success because it was a different context, it was a different time. It was, most importantly, it was a period where people were already engaged. This was something they genuinely cared about, and people wanted to make a more informed decision about maybe who they're going to choose for mayor. Now, beyond context and timing, I think the third point is on the feedback, right? On closing the loops and giving back information to people if we want to have something that actually works. One of the most successful UNDP projects is the one where it's actually from Montenegro. And there, people had a chat. So there's a huge informal economy sector. And they did a crowdsourcing exercise where people could report if the business didn't issue a receipt. And the Ministry of Finance took over to reinvest half of the money that was collected through fines into community projects, which were then selected over an online platform as well. And what happened is that in a year, 1 million euros were collected in fines. Half of this was invested in community projects. So there was a whole process of people engaging, providing information, engaging, and getting information back, and actually seeing a real difference in the ground. So there's a value in that. But I think even in those contexts, even in places where we do have success, where you can actually trace you can actually trace the contribution that you get from engaging, whether online or offline. What we've learned is that we actually have to be very realistic about who is our audience, who is being left out, and how do we, from the beginning, design in a way that doesn't leave people behind. And I think today we've been talking a lot about issues and how to start from the issue. And whether I work on open data or anything else, I think the key thing is neither technology nor open data are not the answer, they're not the engagement, and just granting this access is not going to generate better trust in institution. It's not going to bring the citizens closer to the state, but that we have to treat it as only one of the tools which can bring us closer together, and that to actually have the effect and the impact on good governance and sustainable development that you want to see the change in people's lives, that it's actually a relationship that needs to be nurtured and needs to be based primarily on trust. And that is something I think to work on. And it's not, I said it's like democracy. It's not it's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's a journey, and it's a journey where people learn along the way. So you start with the issue, you have trust in it, and then the other component that I think is extremely important is collaboration. And in collaboration, I think many times what we face, and previous speakers have referred to it as well, is that there's people who are completely detached from the problem who are providing the solutions to the problem. The other, I think very often, the other innovation way has been to say the people who have the problem generally have the solution. The more innovative take has been. But I think the key is that from the outset, if you have the trust and if you have the willingness, that you bring communities together, the ones who have the skills, the others who have the problem, and maybe the enabler who can bridge this kind of divide, for the beginning at least, to address the problem together. And be realistic who is being left behind, and the fact that probably technology is not going to be inclusive, and that it's definitely not the goal in itself. So in the meantime, while we're working on educating people on how to responsibly use technology, while we have to work on capacities, while we have to address the deficiencies in terms of the digital divide, which, as I said, is more than access. It's about the education and the knowledge and the awareness that people have in the communities that work with it. There's a very important role that enablers, as I'd like to call them, have to play. And that can be civil society organizations. I work for the UNDP, so in this case, it could be UNDP as well. And there's been recently a nice example where one of my colleagues from the innovation team developed a crowdfunding campaign for old people's home in Kyrgyzstan, so that people who are connected to the internet can actually contribute to this community that doesn't really have access. And I think the crowdfunding campaign is going very well. More important, another very good example of that, which is not our work, is actually coming from Argentina, where an organization helped in mapping all the slums in a place in Buenos Aires where ambulances couldn't get access because they simply didn't have the information, they didn't know where to go. And that has, I believe, saved lives. So that's going to be my final thought, that while we wait, while we invest in learning, in building communities, that we do so by collaborating more closely together, by working on building trust between what seems now to be, I wouldn't say opposing sides, but definitely sides that have a gap in between, and that civil society, especially in this conversation, has an extremely important role to play. I finished.
if it's working, yeah. So what we really can do, and we heard you had this experience, how to really include the people who do not have access, how make them engaged, what else could be done?
I think, honestly, the first thing that we have to start with, I mean, everybody's saying start with the problem, but the other thing we have to start with is be realistic about the scope. The fact that you put something online, the fact that you put legislation online, it doesn't mean that the people who are going to be affected by that legislation are going to come and comment on it. So, so with that, I think we have to start with a user, obviously, and to understand who are the people that benefit from the work that we want to do, and then find ways to engage with them where they are, because I think we're well beyond the mentality of build it and they will come, but it's about finding the trustworthy partners and finding the people who are embedded in communities that are interested. So I would say just a continuous process that's about being realistic, open, and building those kind of relationships. Okay. And user-centered, of course.
So thanks again, Leila Sadiku from UNDP.